Okay,
Okay.
we're recording.
To the League of Women Voters Supervisors of Elections Candidate Forum. First, before we start the program, we do want to encourage everyone to take part in our other candidate forums and also to use our voters guides. There's two places you can get to the voters guides. One's vote411.org, where it'll match your ballot exactly, or you can go to the League of Manatee's League website, lwvmanatee.org, and click on election kit and election information. We are pleased to have the candidates for Supervisor of Elections, Michael Bennett and Charles Williams Jr. with us today. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer questions. I will hold up my hand at the end of the 1.5 minutes, and the candidate will complete their sentence, and we will move on to the next candidate or the next question. This presentation or forum is being recorded and will be posted on the League of Women Voters Manatee County website. Reference can be made to it, and it always has to be shown in its entirety. It is the property of the League of Women Voters and cannot be used without the League of Women Voters permissions, i.e. don't take bits out for campaign. We're going to be taking questions from you. So please put your questions in the chat area, and we will start with questions that have been pre-submitted. Carolyn Sheets, our Vice President and Voter Services Chair, will be monitoring the chat and come up with your questions to ask the candidates. So let's get started. Michael Bennett, why are you running for this office, and what knowledge and skills do you bring to it?
Well, I don't know about knowledge and skills. I'm running for the office because I'm so concerned about voting, and especially in this particular election. This could be one of the toughest any of us have ever faced. When I came to the supervisor elections after leaving the legislature, it was pretty tough to improve upon the votes that Manatee County had done. Bob Sweat did a great job. And so we started looking at what could we do better. When we got to Manatee County, they had 1 early voting site. We now have 6 early voting sites. When they had about, around 10% or a little bit less of the voters voting by mail, we pushed. Right now we're at about 36% of the people who will be voting by mail. So we were able to do a lot of things by increasing voter participation, the number of voters that turn out. We've pretty much eliminated any lines that are in Manatee County. So I'm very proud of the job that we've done. We've compiled a great staff. We get it done. And at the same time that we've done that, which I know you all will find kind of unusual in government, but I've never asked for a budget increase in the 8 years that I've been there. We've been able to manage the money. And in fact, as in most years, have actually turned money back by employing technology, employing what can we do better, spreading out the vote by mail, spreading out the early voting. So we were able to decrease the number of precincts, and so it worked out real well.
Thank you. And Charles Williams, did you answer the same question? Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm running for Supervisor of Elections office because I believe that voting is a basic American right that should be protected at all times, not left to the current political winds who are making things difficult for people to vote. I want to be able to do my part as Martin Luther King, John Lewis, C.T. Vivens, women like Rosa Parks, to give people an opportunity to vote and not have to continue to face voter suppression. We've been facing this for the last 57 years. Actually, it's been longer than that, but I'm talking about Martin Luther King his time and the guys that was with him fighting for suppression. And I know that I'm running against suppression, and we want to end this thing. We want voting to be easier process. We want voting to be free for all, and all those who qualified, all those who Americans, we want them to be able to vote. We want to make it easier for them to vote and not harder for them to vote. I want to also see how I can play a role in giving those men and women who have been convicted felons an opportunity and not have to go through the red tape to vote. Again, I feel like if they've done their time, I don't think we ought to give them extended prison sentence, but give them an opportunity to become productive citizens. And that means voting. And I think that some of the things that we have going on now, it's not right. And I want to see how I can right the ship and make things easier and better for the American people.
Thank you. Now, Charles, what is your community involvement?
My community involvement involves a lot of things around church. I am a Christian and an assistant pastor. I do a lot of things at church. I've worked with different people teaching different classes. I also did a few things with the Paramount Youth Center. It's been a few years that I've disconnected from that, but I am on the board of Oasis Charter School here in Bradenton, Florida. I do that, and I just kind of just encourage kids. I work at Blackburn Elementary School, where I work with a bunch of kids and encourage them. That's like a ministry to me, to encourage kids and sometimes help kids with the math and reading and whatever they need me to do over at Blackburn.
Thank you. Okay, Michael. Our candidate Bennett.
And the question is?
The question is, what is your community involvement?
Oh, okay. I did the same question. Okay, fine. Currently, I'm on the Moat Brain Advisory Board. I've been on the Benderson Sanka Foundation. I'm past president of the Sertoma Club, which stands for Service to Mankind. Florida Maritime Museum. I've been on the board out there. I'm currently the president of the Gulf Coast Builders Exchange. So I think that as far as the community involvement, I'm also part of Leadership Florida. We've been members of Leadership Florida and trying to work with how we can change things in Florida and make it a little bit better. So I'm involved in a variety of issues and a variety of boards. And my wife would like me to have less boards, but that's really where we're at in community involvement.
Okay.
The most important one, I think, is teen court. I love teen court.
Oh. Okay. Okay, candidate Bennett. What changes are you planning or would you implement to improve the voting process in Manatee?
That's really a tough question because we've done so many things and we're continuously monitoring it. Mr. Williams mentioned having to do with Amendment 4. I've been very, very active in Amendment 4, and there's a couple of things that I'd like to see changed in the elections. We decided in Manatee County, especially because Amendment 4 is so far up in the air, we're not going to do anything to discourage anybody to vote. If they come in, fill out an application, if they check the box that they paid all their fines, paid all their time, done all their things, we're signing them up, which makes it difficult because the court system has bounced that back and forth both ways a couple of times, but we've had no direction from the state of what we're supposed to do to follow the law. So we will continue to look for early voting sites. Early voting sites are extremely difficult to get because we're restricted in what we can do and what we can't do as far as an early voting site. It just about has to be a government-owned building. So we're working with that. Again, we picked up our 6th one this year. A lot of our growth is out east. We're looking for additional polling places out there. And that's really about what you can do. I'm sure some of you have seen that we're pushing hard vote by mail, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, the same question, candidate Williams. What changes would you plan or to implement to improve the voting process in Manatee?
Well, one of the things that I would like to do is, first and foremost, especially when we had a primary, see if we can move to one candidate from the ballot. I don't see why one candidate from one party is on that ballot. That's one of the things I would like to do. And secondly, I would like to extend early voting so that the polls won't be so full and that people can get in and get out on, on election day. I would like to extend early voting a little bit. And also, as I stated earlier, I would certainly like to find ways of working with people to see how we can get things straightened out so that people who come from prison, we can make them citizens again and give them opportunity to vote. Those are some of the things that hot button issues with me, finding a ways, because again, I think voting is a basic American right. And I want to see how we can get those people back in the loop so that they can vote and not have to be treated like second-class citizens and have an opportunity to vote. So those are some of the things that I would like to see happen, as well as finding convenient polling places, make it easier for some of the elder people to vote, and hopefully where they can walk right out of their front door across the street, or maybe even have a polling place in their neighborhood. I want to make it a lot easier for people and encourage people to vote, because our numbers were down, especially in the African-American neighborhood. The numbers were down, and I want to make sure that I go out and encourage them to vote.
Carolyn, sometimes it's hard to turn that off. What do we have in chat? And this question will go to candidate Williams.
All right, I've got two of them here. Actually, this is to Mr. Bennett, but I think Mr. Williams could answer it also. There have been many polling changes recently. How would you go about notifying the registered voters to those places where they will vote?
Am I to answer that question?
Yes, please.
Well, through the mail. I mean, as a supervisor of election officer, we would mail those people and make sure that they understand where they'll be voting from, or if necessary, making calls. But we want to make sure that all of our constituents and everybody know the right poll that they are to go to. And we've been seeing things like that happen. In fact, it happened to me one time. I was sent to the wrong polling place, and I had to call back to the supervisor of elections officer to get verification as to which poll that I was supposed to be at, because one poll that I was voting at didn't have me there, and they had moved my poll and I didn't know it, so I had to. So I think that's a good and legitimate question. We need to make sure that we communicate with people, and hopefully by letter, email, somehow we can get them to know which polling place that they need to go to vote. We don't want them running around town looking for their place and be discouraged from voting, because that happens. So I would make sure through email, via email, or by the post office.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett.
You know, it's interesting. We do, when we change anybody's polling location, we automatically notify them by letter, okay? Send them a new voter registration card. So they will, a lot of times they get 2 pieces, but we definitely notify them all by mail. In addition to that, on election day, we go to the old polling place, post signs, and give notices where they should have to go. I think it's one of the reasons that we encourage the early voting so much in the vote by mail. If you go to early voting and you've got 6 locations scattered around town, you really don't have to worry about going to your precinct. You've got 14 days, in this case coming up, that you can go by any early voting site. You don't have to be at your precinct. You can go in and vote. They will print you a ballot and you can vote. And obviously vote by mail is probably the easiest way that people can do that. But we have to encourage people to don't sit on those ballots at home. As soon as they get those ballots, fill them out and mail them out at least a week ahead of time. Mail them back to us a week ahead of time. It really hurts when you are shocked at the number of ballots we get in after election night. In fact, this is today's mail, and all of these ballots were dated and signed after the election, okay? They were dated and signed by the customer. So you got to wonder, why are people sitting on a ballot at home?
Okay, Carolyn.
Okay, the next one, she has several. This is from Connie. I'll start with the first part because I work on this one. Does the Supervisor of Elections Office make concerted efforts to register high school and college students? We'll start with Mike.
Yes, we do. We try to speak to every high school every year, go out and talk to all the students. We encourage them to sign up when they're 16. One of the things that we're doing now to even encourage them more is we're recruiting those 16-year-olds to come down and be poll workers. Though they can't vote until they're 18, they're registered to vote at 16. So we want to get them early. And then we hire them. We actually hire them and pay them. They will come down and become poll workers. And so think about it. You get to skip school for a day. You get your community service hours in, and I'm going to pay you $150. I mean, I skipped a lot of school when I was a kid. Nobody ever paid me $150.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we're doing, but we are signing those kids up as best as we can.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams, I don't know how you might address that. Making a concerted effort for the high school and college kids to get them registered to vote. Do you think that's important?
That's very important. That would be one of my agendas, to go to high school and civic groups as well as college and encourage men and women to vote, and especially women and African Americans, because maybe 57 years ago, that wasn't the case for us, and it's still hard for us. Sometimes it's a lot of, with some of the suppression going on, it's still kind of hard for us. But we got to remember, around 57 years ago, women of any color or men couldn't vote. So yes, that's near and dear to my heart. I would definitely go to civic groups. I would go to high schools. I would go to colleges and encourage them to vote, because voting is again, a basic American right. And if you want your voice heard, well, let's make it be heard through the vote. It's important that they understand the process. I will go out, talk to them about the process, what it takes, get signed up, and also teach others and be one of those people, an advocate for others, and encourage other people to vote. So yes, voting is important to me.
Okay, thank you. Alice, back to you.
Okay. So this is for candidate Williams. What changes would you plan or would you implement to, this is I'm going to skip this, to improve voter registration? We talked about young people. All right. Pinellas County has, how do you feel, this is from Judy, how do you feel about online voting? We do our financial transactions online. We submit our income taxes online. It would be safe and increase participation from younger voters, lighten the load on UPS, and make counting votes easier, facilitate voting for weak, and keeping the other options. So that's from Judy. So candidate,
Well,
how do you feel about online voting?
I'll say this, with the pandemic, we are learning to do a lot of things online, and we may be going to do just that. Although I think that we need to make sure that we have some precautions in place because of the interference from the election in 2016. We need to make sure that we have something solid in place to make sure that there will be no interference or fraud. But again, with the pandemic and some of the things that are taking place in our world today, kids are learning from home remotely. I think it might be a good idea. And again, it's not much different from a mail ballot. So I don't know. I think it might be something that can be looked at, and I think it's something that we probably would end up going to with all of the different things that we're dealing with now. I don't have a problem with it as long as the system is safe and we can make sure that there's no fraudulent activities taking place. I don't have a problem with it. I think it'll be a good idea because that's one of the things that I want to do, make it easier for people to vote. And I think it's a good idea if it's a safer idea. So yes, I have no problem with it.
Candidate Bennett.
Actually, I have a lot of problem with it. And the biggest problem I've got with it is, you take all the security, say, of a Bank of America, and somebody cracks in, a kid cracks in, and all of a sudden is able to gather information on millions and millions and millions of people and be able to change their withdrawal money. If these hackers can get in and hack the NASA, the space programs, the military programs, I guarantee you they will figure out a way to hack into ours. Could it be somewhere down the future? I'd like to think it could be, but I will guarantee you that we're a long ways away from it with the computer hackers out there, whether it's Amazon getting hacked or whether it's the banks getting hacked, whoever it is, the Russians hacking in, if you want to go down that route. I just don't believe that we are ready for that in our country yet. I don't know of any country that's doing it that way. I think it'd be too easy to all of a sudden have Mickey Mouse elected as president, as some kid would love to do it. There was a test case, I believe it was at MIT, and it might have been the University of Ohio, where somebody came up with a crack-proof deal. It took the kids at MIT less than a half hour to crack into it.
Canceled it.
Can I give a small rebuttal? Not that.
We're going to give equal time. So if you want to talk about it, we'll have a conclusion at the end, and you can talk about it.
Okay.
In the conclusion. We'll give you time.
Okay.
This is for candidate Bennett. Pinellas County has a little less than 2.5 times more population than Manatee. It has 27 early voting sites, and Manatee has 5. Your reaction to this, and also how are early voting sites locations determined?
It's really interesting, very, very difficult to get an early voting site. If you go by the state law, it has to be pretty much a government-owned building. I agree that Pinellas has got a lot more government-owned buildings than we do, okay? We've got very, very few. When you really think about it, out east, okay, we're getting more and more, but there's nothing out there. We finally got the one on Florida Department of Transportation out on 64. That was the first one out there. They're building a library out further on Highway 70, okay, and we will have an early voting site there. We use the libraries here in town because they are accessible and they have to give us the space. So we've messed with it. When I was in the legislature, I introduced legislation to give us a shot at a wild card, if you will. We had a place that did not have a government-owned building, and there was nothing in the vicinity. We were able to get one and secure it. I don't know about you, but I know very few businesses that even if we went to them, could afford to give me up 3,000 square feet of their office space for 14 days and shut down their business. So it's very, very difficult, but we continue to look, and we will continue to look. I know that, in fact, as one of your people who's participating in the call today, that works at the early voting site that we had to go to the Manatee Utility Department out there. So it's very difficult. It's easy to say, but to follow the law, it's very, very difficult.
Candidate Williams, talking about the early voting sites, additional early voting sites.
Well, one of the things I would have to do is actually be in to see what he can see. If the laws are mandated, we just have to follow the law and do everything we can to get more sites. And I would love to have more sites again, so that we can reach more people. As I stated, I want to make it easier for people to vote. And I would abide by the law. I would make sure that I'm living by the Florida statutes that govern that officer. And if it's something that we have to do to keep working on and keep chipping away until we get more government buildings or get people on board with us to get more sites, that's what I do. I just keep working and chip away just about like I do for everything. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. We just have to keep chipping away and work with in the system and do what we can until we can partner up with people that have these places that will, partner up with us so that we can use these places. And as you stated, I'm not there yet, but that'll be something I'll be working on, finding out what we can do to get more polling places. And to me, getting more polling places, it says that we're getting more voters.
Okay. Carolyn, I'm sending it back to you to get some more out of chat.
Okay, we got several now. I'm moving on to Samantha's. This is kind of complicated. So I see duplicate and triplicate names on the voter registration lists. Aren't names checked before they are added a second or third time, or periodic inspections of the lists being corrected? Does this mean someone can vote more than once by maybe more than one way? I think we're on Mr. Williams. What do you think?
Yes, ma'am. You're on me. Well, to put it this way, that's something the president even asked people to do, to test the system out and see if it works by voting twice. Well, I can tell you that's not a good idea. It's I think it's a third-degree felon. I think you ought to just vote one time the right way. If you're going to mail in, then mail in. If you're going to show up in person, then show up in person. And that's something that have to be looked at in the office to make sure that that's not happening. And if it is happening, you have to assign some people to make sure that that type of stuff isn't happening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bennett, I'm
It's
sure you
interesting.
have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. When I was in the legislature, I was responsible for a bill that brought forth something called ERIC. And ERIC now is 31 states, I believe it is 34 states. And we cross-check the voter rolls in those states. So if you come down to register tomorrow in my office, as soon as we put it in, it's going to check with those other 27 states and say, wait a minute, Carolyn, she's still registered in Ohio, okay? They're automatically going to remove you from Ohio and put you on our voter rolls because we're the last in and the last out. And in fact, as every non-registered voter in Manatee County will be getting a letter from the state of Florida, because we put it in the bill, that they will be getting a letter from the state of Florida probably within the next 10 days, encourage them to get down and register to vote. So we're always pushing for people to register to vote. As far as the duplicate names, we pull them up. That's the reason we do it by the date of birth, we do it by the address, we do it by the face, and we double check those. Oftentimes where you see the double is the fact that you're registered up here and Carolyn Sheets moved to Sarasota County 2 days before the election and registered, okay? We will catch that, okay? Because as soon as it happens and we swipe your driver's license, we will know that you're registered in more than one place. So those are the kinds of things that we're continuously monitoring, continuously looking at. It works out pretty well.
Okay, thank you. All right, going on. This is from Connie. What was, I think we're on you, Mike Bennett. What was the demographic makeup of the actual voters on August 18th as to race, ethnic background, age, so on? Any idea?
Who's asking that question?
It's someone named Connie. I
I would ask Connie to call my office.
Okay.
I don't have those kinds of numbers in front of me. I really don't. I would be shocked if any supervisor could tell you those numbers off the top of their head. Had I known that that was a concern, I thought that I supplied that to the league though, and actually had that breakdown.
You
And I
did, but
don't believe that
everybody wasn't on.
I don't believe that I have those numbers
I
with me.
think they're on the website.
They are on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might be a little hard to find at this point, but right after
Right.
election, they popped up.
No, I don't have those numbers right there.
Okay, let's go to, here we go. I think both of you could give an answer to this one. Hillsborough County notifies mail-in voters when their ballot is received at the Board of Elections. Should Manatee County be doing this?
Charles, let me go first on this, okay?
Okay.
The only reason I'm going to ask is because I think I can bring it to a quick halt. Hillsborough County does not notify them when it comes up. It's put on their website, okay? We literally do not have the time or the resources to contact everybody and say, hey, we got your ballot in. But you can track it on the website if you go to Manatee County, and that's where an answer from myself or Charles will tell you there's literally no way that we can contact everybody, say, okay, we got it, okay? But they can go on the website to see that we had it. And that's exactly how Hillsborough does it.
Okay. All right. Alice, do you have some more questions to add? We'll go back to you. I have several here.
Yes, I do. I guess I'm losing track on who we're starting with. So I think.
I know. It's kind of confusing there, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's Mr. Williams' turn because Mike took a couple
He took
of.
that question. I'll do this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, he
So
did.
Candidate Williams, if you had additional funding for elections, what would you add to what Manatee County does right now?
If I had additional funding, could you
Right,
repeat the question?
if the county had additional funding, what would you use it for? I know that right now there's a certain number of things that are done with that funding, and if there was additional funding, what additional things would you use the funding for?
Just off the top of my head and not being in the office to know a lot about what he has going on, I would probably say maybe more equipment, maybe upgrading some of the equipment if it had not been upgraded to make the process a little bit easier, making it easier to count the ballots when they come in. I would probably use it for equipment and maybe purchasing maybe polling places, whatever I can do to make it better for the community and people, maybe use it for polling places or just the election equipment. And for those who have proven themselves, maybe start giving out some raises to the people that deserve them.
Okay, Candidate Bennett.
You know, it's interesting. I know this shocks people coming from anybody who works for government. I don't need any more money, okay? We do extremely well. We've been able to either hold constant or reduce the budget every year that I've been there. And we've done it by upgrading to the technological equipment. We have, and you all have gone to those polling places, you know, we've switched, we've got the iPads in there, we're signing them in. We have 3 high-speed scanners to process all of the mail. And I don't believe that a government agency should spend money just because it's there. I think what they should do is go for efficiency. And I stand by the record that we handle about 30% more voters now in Manatee County than we did when we got there. We've been able to hold the budget down. We've got rid of the lines. And so unless somebody could tell me something we should purchase, I don't know what it would be. But I've got my office, Charles touched on, giving them pay increases. I'm quite proud of the pay increases we've given our people because we gave them encouragement. You lower the cost of the operation, and we will pass a portion of that on to everybody as far as salaries and wages. And so since I've been there, I think everybody in that office who was there when I originally got there has had about a 30% pay increase. And they've done it because of their own efficiency of driving down the cost of running an election.
Okay. Candidate Bennett, what consideration would you give to early voting locations that are convenient to public transportations, such as the colleges and other places that are convenient to people that do not have access to a vehicle?
It's really kind of a difficult, going back to how difficult it is to find an early voting site. Let's say that we wanted to use public schools, which I'm entitled to do. I can use public schools. The problem with it is years ago, the Florida legislature passed something called the Jessica Lunsford Act. Nobody can get access to that school until they've been checked out and verified and have the proper ID and all the rest of it, and they can do a background check. That's when you, as a parent, go up to see your kid. You've got to go through the process. It's very, very difficult. And then trying to find a place that would have a room, 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, that we could put people in. Most of those places don't have it. When we talked to USF did not have a place that we could use. When we talked to Manatee Community College or State College, Florida, again, they did not have a place to use. It would be convenient, but again, it's very, very difficult to find these places. Most of you ladies have been involved in some kind of business, and imagine that business having to, one, be government owned, and two, have 3,000 or 4,000 square feet of space that you could give up for 10, 14, 20 days. Okay, it's very difficult, but I like the idea. It's just a lot easier to talk about than it is to get the places to go along with it.
Candidate Williams, what consideration would you give to public transportation and early voting sites?
You could say that one more time. I didn't hear you. We kind of
The
had
consideration to early voting sites and public transportation.
Okay. As Mr. Bennett touched on it, as you stated, Manatee County is not as big as Hillsborough and some of the other places. And as you stated, since you have to keep everything within the law and they have to be government buildings, again, all you can do is do the best you can to find places that's going to be big enough and people that are partner with you to let you use those places. And when it comes down to public transportation, haven't thought about that one a lot, but maybe see how we can use maybe even get some of the churches involved with vans and different things of getting people to our polls, if that's the question, using some of that. And we have our buses and city buses and things of that nature. You know, that's a kind of tough question. I haven't thought about that a lot, and you know, that's all I can tell you on that one.
Okay. Carolyn, how about some out of the chat?
I can give you some here. Okay. The Sarasota Supervisor of Elections visits each assisted living, independent living, or nursing home. I think this must be absentee ballots. What do you suggest be done to support the elderly who have changed their residence and who may not get to the polls or have changed their signature? I think we're on Mr. Williams here.
Yes, we are. Well, one of the things we need to do is we need to make sure that we stay in close contact with their caretakers to make sure that everything is you know, good with them, and the things that we need to do, we need to make sure we do it through the caretaker, because the elderly people don't get around, and some of them may not drive, or some of them may not see well or understand well. So we need to be able to work with the caretaker so that we can make sure that they are informed of the things that's changed. If it's a change request, we need to make sure, whether it's change name, address, party affiliation, we need to make sure that we are working with somebody that's you know, working for with that person, so that we can make sure that they understand here's what need to happen, and make sure that they get their change requests in a timely fashion. You know, I think that, you know, that's the way I would do it. You know, work through somebody that's close to them if they're too old to do that. And yes, I think that we need to make sure that we reach out to the nursing homes to make sure if there's someone there that's taking care of that we get them to understand, you know, here's a, you know, what we need to do for this person. Here's a change request. Here's a new voting information card. You know, just work through a third party person.
Mr. Bennett?
You know, it's interesting. We did something this year with Freedom Village. we offered assisted voting. And what we did is they didn't want us in there, okay? They didn't want people coming in and going out. When their people left the building, they gave them quite a hassle of even getting back in. So even if you're a resident there, they did not want you to leave the building. And they still don't want you to leave the building. And several other retirement homes are that way. So we've really done a large promotion on vote by mail with them. In addition to that, there are some people that do not want to vote by mail, period.
Oh,
But
that's true.
they want to vote, okay? And so what we did is we sent out two people, a Republican and a Democrat, and they actually went there and helped them vote with assisted voting. They had to give us a list ahead of time who wanted to vote. We printed a vote by mail ballot for them, okay? But it wasn't a vote by mail ballot. We took it out, let them vote it, seal it, and then we brought it back to the office and was able to process it. It's called assisted voting. Freedom Village wanted it this year. They did not want to have their people go to another precinct because they didn't want them to have to come back in. So, and I think Charles touched on it. You've got to work with the caregivers and the rest of them. Just because it's a nursing home doesn't mean they want you there.
I have a question I'm going to add because we have had some emails asking us this question. I know there are laws about people helping and delivering or picking up absentee ballots and delivering them. Are the caregivers able to do that? Like if they went over to one of the assisted livings, they could take like 50 absentee ballots back to the SOE's office?
Yes and no, Carol. And the reason it's saying yes or no, you cannot harvest ballots in Florida if you're being paid, okay? I cannot hire somebody to go down the street and pick up the ballots. Some states allow that. We don't allow that in Florida.
Right.
But you're the caretaker at the retirement home. You're not getting paid for that. You're getting paid to be the caretaker. You can collect those ballots and bring them down to our office, okay? And so there are ways that you can do it, but it's a very thin line. You don't want to cross over that somebody's getting paid to harvest those ballots. It's what's called ballot harvesting. But we encourage it. We want them to do it, but we also want to make sure that they are true volunteers, okay? The other problem they've had over the years, believe it or not, is some of the union shops where the union boss calls Carolyn in and says, Carolyn, bring your ballot in here. I'm going to help you fill it out, okay? And that's going to be part of your union dues because I'm going to mail it back for you too. So you've had some issues with that, and that's the problem with the ballot harvesting. So we're very, very careful on it. But we do encourage them. We will go out and sign them up for vote by mail and collect that ballot for them.
Okay, thank you. I'm interrupting again. The state has suggested that the League of Women Voters do that. I do not want my people getting involved in something that might be accused of being harvest balloting. But would it be okay if the League of Women Voters would send out emails suggesting they have someone collect the ballots and bring them in? Would that be okay?
Is that me, Charles, or where are we
That's
going?
you.
Yeah, I think we need to give Charles equal time, Carolyn,
Right.
about
We'll get to it.
to talk about the ballot collection.
Okay.
To the next
I
question.
can answer that question. I can piggyback off of what he just said. We got to make sure that we do things the right way. And talking to that question, we got to make sure that it's a family member or a caretaker who's not getting paid that can bring those ballots in. So he basically answered it. So I'm basically going to tell you the same answer. As long as it's not it has to be a family member or a caretaker and someone who's not getting paid. Other than that, they shouldn't be touching those ballots.
Okay.
Other question? Or do you want me to go to one?
Do you have a question? I have several here, Alice. I can keep
Well,
going.
keep going. I'll go back to I've only got one left.
Okay. Let Mr. Williams take this since we kind of ignored him there. How much influence can the supervisor of elections have on voter suppression?
Well, I'm not the supervisor of elections yet, but I imagine if he desire to, he can have a lot on it. If that's the desire, I think he can have a whole lot of influence on it. I don't know how much influence Mr. Bennett have on it, but again, people can basically do whatever they decide they want to do. Hopefully he doesn't have an influence on it, because I think it's wrong. And I think, again, voting is a basic American right, and I think everybody should have that opportunity who's eligible to vote. They should have that opportunity to vote. Even those men and women who have been incarcerated and even convicted felons who's done their time, I don't think we should give them an extended prison sentence. I think they ought to have a right to vote if they've done their time. Give them an opportunity to become productive citizens. I don't know if Mr. Bennett is one of those guys that's part of the voter suppression. I can't speak to that, but I will say it's wrong, and I think that everybody should have an opportunity to vote.
Mr. Bennett?
You know, it's interesting. If you all had looked a little bit about my background, when I was in the legislature, okay, I actually introduced legislation to allow all felons to vote. As a member of the Republican Party, I was not welcomed with my idea, but I did. I introduced the legislation to hopefully let every felon vote. I didn't quite get as fancy as Amendment 4. I didn't start excluding people. I just said, hey, if they've done their time and the rest of it. The problem with Amendment 4 is trying to figure out who legally can vote and who legally can't vote. I encourage everybody to vote. I speak to everybody. I think the Supervisor Elections Office should be nonpartisan. It shouldn't be a partisan seat. It shouldn't be a Republican. It shouldn't be a Democrat. It should be somebody who's really, truly committed to voting. I've been committed to voting as a veteran, as a legislator, as a member of the Florida Senate, and certainly as a supervisor of elections, and will continue to do that.
Okay, I have one back here that I was going to add. Since we got onto the returning citizens, when a returning citizen goes to vote, what kind of proof does he or she have to show that they have been relieved of their duty? Mr. Bennett, I think you're up.
Nothing.
Nothing? They just go in and put in
They
their
come in.
driver's license and
They come into my office with a driver's license. They're a citizen, and they fill out the paperwork, and they check the box down at the bottom. It says, I've been a convicted felon, but my civil rights have been restored, or I've been a convicted felon, and I've paid all my fines and fees. We send that information up to the state. The state of Florida is the one who actually comes back and says later on, I'm sorry, but he was convicted of a murder, okay? And, a lot of people talk about the Amendment 4. Well, what's murder? Murder is easy. You jumped out of the car and shot somebody with a gun. But it's murder, I guarantee you. If you hit my kid, you're drunk, that's murder, as far as I'm concerned. But that's not murder. It's how the state of Florida convinces murder. So it's kind of difficult. We kind of take people at their word, and it's a real problem. The real problem is I don't know right now if I'm actually truly following the law, because of last week, that court case got overturned again.
Right.
That case got overturned again. It said you had to pay all the fines and fees. But Florida does not have any single database that I can go to. So consequently, since I have no way of verifying it, I'm not checking it. If you come in and sign and you've paid them all, I'm going to take you at your word until somebody in the state of Florida or someone else gives me something in writing that says Carolyn Sheets is no longer qualified. I'm going to register you to vote.
so I could go into my polling place, show my driver's license and vote, just like that.
If you're registered, yes.
Right, I mean, after we went through this.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Bennett. If there's nothing in place to stop a person from voting, you have to take their word for it until the state of Florida puts something concrete in place to say whether that person can or cannot vote. I have to agree with him on that one.
Okay.
In other words, let them vote. Let them vote
Let
until
'em
they
vote.
tell you.
Okay,
All right.
find your one best last question, and then we'll do the final.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you want my best question?
The best
Okay, I don't know if
in
it's the
chat.
best, but this is a very interesting one. The supervisor of election is a partisan office. Should it be that way? Why or why not?
I think I just answered that. It
You
should
did.
not be a partisan office.
It shouldn't.
It should not be a partisan office. You should be elected on your merits, not because of your party affiliation. And I think you're going to see that potentially change. I do believe that the Second Amendment on there this time, some people refer to it as the jungle primary, some people call it, ranked choice voting or whatever. But I think you're going to see an opportunity for more independent voters to get in. We're about 30% of that in Manatee County. And I do believe that you're going to see sometime in the near future more independents elected. I think people are pretty much fed up with both political parties. And I think you're going to see people moving away from it.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with him. I was talking to a friend last Tuesday about that same thing. And I told him that I'm actually fed up with parties, whether Democrat, Republican. It's just too crazy. And people get crazy if you this, and people get crazy if you're a Republican, a Democrat, and all the policies. So I told him, if I win that election and become the supervisor of election, I was going to be an independent. And I feel like being an independent will be fair. I don't want anybody to think that I'm going this way or that way. I just want to be fair. And as a Christian, I want to do the right thing, basically, because it's the right thing to do. So yes, I agree with Mr. Bennett on that. I like the independent role because, again, I'm not with the Democrat, I'm not with the Republicans, and some people feel like they have more pull, or you'll do different things for them by being one of those. So I agree with him. I think it shouldn't be partisan office.
Okay, thank you. Back to Alice.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to give 2 minutes to each of you to do a summary. And we're going to start with candidate Williams. Go ahead and summarize what you want to tell the voters.
Again, I'm Charles N. Williams Jr., and I'm a candidate for Manatee County Supervisor of Election. And if elected, I promise you that I'll be the best supervisor of election that you've ever seen. I appreciate Mr. Bennett for being in there, and I really do want to become the supervisor of election. And I appreciate if you remember me when you vote. Again, I'm Charles Williams. I want to do things the right way. I'm an agent for change. And I think right now it is time for change. And again, with that being said, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I thank the League of Women Voters for inviting me. I really appreciate everything. Thank even those who had questions. I appreciate everything that has been done up until this point tonight. And I even thank Mr. Bennett for coming on with me and sharing this moment. Thank you all.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Candidate Williams. Candidate Bennett.
I got to tell you, I think that I've earned the right to be supervisor of elections another term. Again, in the 8 years that I've been there, we've always held solid on the budget. We've increased the turnout at all of the polling locations. We went from 1 early voting site to 6 early voting sites. We went about 30 or 35,000 people voting by mail to, we just mailed 106,000 ballots for the primary. And we're expecting to mail about 125,000 for the general election. And it's interesting because I'm sure you've heard your friends and neighbors and people talk about, well, they all get rejected. We sent out 100,000 in this last primary. We got back 50,000. For bad signatures, we rejected 85, okay? But we did have about 400 that came in late. And then we had another couple of hundred for a variety of reasons. The husband signing the wife's ballot, the ballot wife signing hers. And even on those, if we can prove that two people in the same household, some people say, well, that's not quite legal. I think it is, and I'll argue that one in court with them. But if I can match up Mr. Williams's signature to his wife's and his wife's signature to him, I'm going to count both the ballots. And so we kind of really have worked on that. And if we're going to err, we're going to err on the side of the voter. And in Manatee County, if we're going to err, we will err on the side of the voter. I hope I've earned y'all's trust. I think that we've tried to push the types of things that you all want and we all want, and Mr. Williams wants, and the rest of it. We want more voter participation in Manatee County. I hope you select Mike Bennett when you go to the polls this year.
Thank you, both candidate Bennett and candidate Williams. We really appreciate your cooperation and your readiness for the voters to see you and hear from you, and encourage everyone to participate in our continuing candidate forums that are coming up. Thank you very much.
And thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank y'all.
And
God bless.